Hey everyone, welcome to Theology Thursdays. I'm Pastor Brandon, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. As you may have noticed, if you've watched our prior Theology Thursdays, we are dealing with major issues, major theological issues that theologians have wrestled around with for thousands of years. And so we don't at any level believe that we're going to wrestle down these topics or issues. More so what we want to do is kind of give you an introduction to these issues and topics so that you better understand them. Now, if you're a learner and you're like, I want to go further, I want to dive deeper, I want to give you a couple resources that have helped influence these conversations that we're having and ultimately our own understanding of God's Word. The first would be Doctrine, What Christians Should Believe by Mark Driscoll and Gary Breshears. This is a great introduction to systematic theology. I would encourage you to buy that if you're new to this and want to go deeper. There's another book called Christian Theology by Millard Erickson. This is a far more in-depth study of systematic theology, and it is a great resource for me. There's one final book that I want to make you aware of. It's called Systematic Theology by Wayne Grudem. All three of those resources could help you better understand these topics, because right now what we're doing is flying about 30,000 feet above the earth and just giving you an introduction to these topics. The topic that we're going to deal with today is creation. This is why it's important. Our understanding of authority in life stems from our understanding of creation. If I've been created, then who is the creator and what do I owe to him? My sense of purpose. If I've been created, what was the creator's intent and purpose in that? So you can see it has wide-ranging implications. And so what I want to do is begin to read the creation account in Genesis chapter 1, the very beginning of the Bible. It says this: In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, we're just going to read day 1. We don't have time to read all of Genesis 1, but this is what it says. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day and the darkness night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. It continues on for the next 5 days after that. So God creates in 6 days. On the seventh day, he rested. But what you see is this literary pattern that happens throughout the entire, basically verse 3 through verse 27. Here's the pattern that we see. There's an announcement, and God said, just like at the beginning of verse 3. And God said, then there's a commandment, let there be light, or literally, let there be light, and there was light. So there's a commandment from God. Then there's separation that we see. So a separation of light and darkness. We see a separation between land later on and water. And then you have a report. And so it was. So there's kind of like this signing off. And so it was, and ultimately an evaluation, and God saw it was good. So we saw that in the first day of the creation account. The rest of the days follow that general literary pattern. So you do see some literary framework for understanding Genesis chapter 1. Now, many views have arisen from this that deal with, okay, was earth created with an age or not? Did he have a belly button or not? How old is the earth exactly? A lot of different questions that we can have. And so what I want to do is just give you a few different views of creation. The first would be called historic creationism. Basically what this one does is it says that the first verse, so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That happened for an undefined time period, and then later on there was a literal 6 days. Now, what you have to take into account is two different Hebrew words that are used for create. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Hebrew word used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, literally means to make something out of nothing. Nothing existed, no matter, and then something existed. Matter was literally created. That's the Hebrew word and its real meaning there. So God created out of nothing the heavens and the earth. Now, another word that's used throughout Genesis for create is more of shaping or forming, molding together. And that's how this view views the rest of the creation account. So God created out of nothing the heavens and the earth. They were void, they were without form, and then a literal 6-day period happened in which God began to shape together creation. Make sense? Now, the strengths of this is it leaves open the possibility of an old earth or a young earth. It could be either or. We don't have a time frame given to us. After God created the heavens and the earth, was there an extended amount of time? Was it a short time period? Was it immediately after he began to shape and form? So it leaves that door open. Also, there seems to indicate in Exodus 20, verse 11, when God's giving the 10 commandments to the nation of Israel, one of the commandments is to basically keep the Sabbath. Keep 1 day a week set aside where you rest. Why? Because God rested on the seventh day. So there seems to be a literalness to the creation account in terms of days, like 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 6 days in which God shaped, formed, molded the earth. This view takes that into account. Now, there are some things to consider in this. So Adam names all of the animals, and then God causes him to fall asleep, takes out his rib, ultimately forms woman. Did that happen in a literal 24-hour time frame? He was able to do all of that. Well, we're unsure. And the historic creation view doesn't address that. There's another view called the literary framework view. And this is where it says, well, Genesis 1, chapter 1, is more poetry. And so it's figurative in nature. We don't want to take it too literal. Now, can it be literal in some form or fashion? Absolutely. But it's primarily figurative. Now, what this does is it has a strength, of course. We're not buckled down to, is it an old earth or a young earth? We can take into account that this is expressing what is true, that God has created it all, but not in a literal sense. So God certainly is creator of all, but did it happen exactly like this, or is this more poetry? Well, one of the weaknesses is, of course, going back to Exodus 20, verse 11. Well, it seems to indicate from the 10 Commandments that there was a literal 6-day period in which God shaped, formed, molded creation to what he wanted it to be. Another view is the day-age view. So this is where the days referred to in Genesis 1 are not 24-hour periods, but rather ages. So the Hebrew word yom, which is used translated here as day, can also be used and translated as age. So this view says these are ages. There was one age, and then there was another age. And so God brought this about very slowly, process it in a very slow way. Now, that's one strength, that it takes into account the word yom. Now, the weakness, of course, is the order of events. So the sun does not appear until the fourth day, so day and light. Did that happen for an undefined time period or an age? Again, we don't know. Now, there's another view, theistic evolution. So this is where God has began to create, but then he's allowed creation to kind of do its own work and go through the evolutionary process. Of course, there are major issues with this if you are a Christian. Beyond the scientific issues, which, by the way, there are a lot of scientific issues with evolution. But what we read in the creation account is God created, and they had offspring, each species, to its own kind. So we don't read that species actually became another kind. We read that God created them, and when they had offspring, they were of the same kind. Also, God is actively involved throughout the entire creation account, whether this is poetry or not. You see that God's highly involved. He doesn't allow creation to just kind of work itself out through a process of natural selection. So I would certainly discard this. I believe that the two most reasonable views that we can have are the historic creationist view and the literary framework view. Did the Lord create the earth with age? It's a serious question to consider. No matter what point you take, did he create the earth with age? How long was the time frame between Genesis 1 verses 1 and 2 and Genesis chapter 1 verses 3 and the rest of the creation account? We're not sure. So since the Bible doesn't give us clear, definitive evidence but on those questions, I would say that this is kind of an open-handed issue. How old is the earth? Open-handed issue. We can argue, but we are going to show charity here. Here's why it doesn't matter to me if you believe in a young earth or really an old earth. We still land in the same place with both of these views. And here's the place. We believe that God is the only God. God is a triune God. We believe in the Trinity, which is actually spoke of when he says, let us make man in our image, plural. We know that God is eternally uncaused. So nobody created God. He's forever existed in eternity past and will forever exist. God is living. God is independent. God is transcendent. God is immanent. Like he's actively involved in the work of creation, sustaining it, providentially providing for it. God is personal. God is powerful. God is beautiful. God is holy. God is gracious. And God is authoritative. Do you see in both of those views, we can have all of these characteristics held in alignment. Now, I personally kind of lean towards the historic creationist view, which leaves the door open to a lot of different topics that we could discuss further on. But I actually believe that I don't lose anything in that, whether it's a young earth or old earth. Now, here's why this is so important. Again, your view of creation affects your view of God. So if I believe that God is creator of all and I am his creation, then I am going to humbly submit to my creator. I am not equal with him. I am under him. He is uncaused. I am caused. He had to create me. And so I fall under him. I know that he was actively involved, right, in all of creation, and that man had held a unique place in creation, that we bear his image. So God's personal. Like God created me, God created you, and we've ultimately stemmed from that which did not exist. He made something out of nothing. I also know this, it gives me purpose. And this is really important. It gives me and you purpose. You know, if there is no such thing as a creator and all of this is random, what purpose can life have? I mean, purpose could be random. Whatever you feel like life's purpose is, you do, and whatever I feel like. But we know that without truly a creator, and all of this is random, there can be no beautiful design, beautiful purpose in life. So Genesis 1, the creation account, lots of different views, a lot to consider, questions to ask. But here's what we do know, no matter where you're falling on this, that God has created everything. He is eternal. He is preeminent. We are his. We are under him. We're not equal to, and we are to follow him all of our days. So I hope this has been encouraging. If you have any questions, we encourage you, hey, shoot us an email, put it in the comment section below.